All right, all right, all right. Let's get started. Let's get started. Let's get started. Michael, you're recording this, right? You're all set. You got the record button. So we're doing coaching for coaches, and I don't see any of my friends from England because what I'm going to run through is something, well, I switched it a little bit. But Recovery Coach Academy UK has asked me to do a little session with their folks too. So that's been kind of fun. I did that last week on Wednesday. I think Wednesday is turning out to be my day to be at home and do my domestic management and stuff like that. Anyway, my name is Phil Valentine, but for the grace of God, I have not had a drink or a drug since December 28th, 1987. So I'm looking at this December, if all goes well, will be 37 years in recovery. Um, I was the executive director at the Connecticut Community for Addiction Recovery. I had a 25-year career there, and I just retired last month, October 4th, 6 weeks into retirement. Shed the backpack. My back is feeling a little better, not so heavy. So, Kevin, to go to your question, yeah, I took that backpack of leading an organization off, and Kevin Schuler asked me, so do you feel lighter or is it a void? And I said, that's a great question. It's like both for right now. Of course, like a lot of the people here, they know how much I miss them and love them. And you're always going to miss that. But it was also time for me to hand over that backpack to Miss Stacy Charpentier, and so far it's going really well. So really glad with all that. I want to talk a little bit about healing. Healing. So that's the subject, and I'm going to explore it in, well, it won't come to as a surprise to some of you, but maybe to others. It's a little different approach. Um, so I'd like you to introduce yourself and tell me geographically, where are you sitting and how do you think about healing? Hi, Chris. How things in New London? Looks bright and sunny. And you don't necessarily have to go first. I was just saying hi, but
I'll go.
oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Chris. I'm a person in recovery. I'm in London, Connecticut. Bright sunny day. Uh, what does healing mean to me?
How do you think about it?
How do I think about it?
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty oh a vague word. I suppose it can go in a lot of different
Yeah.
directions. I think healing is subjective to the individual, and it's gonna be unique based on their experiences and how they filter experiences based on, their lived
Hmm.
what they've gone through in their life or what I've gone through in my life. So I guess healing for me, oh, if I have to I'd say healing like also equals like serenity in my life. And if I work towards serenity, I'm working through a healing process.
Hmm. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else care? Hey, there's a Edgardo, you're not Lamont. Do you not know your name? I'm just kidding. Just messing with you.
Hello,
So,
everyone. My name is Lamont.
nah, there you
I'm
go.
sorry, Lamont was
Mickey,
using my computer.
there you go. Hi, Mickey. How do you think about healing?
Um, so first, I'm Mickey from Burlington, Vermont. However, I'm sitting in a hotel room in Dover, New Hampshire right now.
Okay.
And so for me, healing is the process of um, accepting and becoming comfortable with something that has happened in my life that's been somewhat traumatic.
Ooh, okay. Thank you. Benita. Benita, you can go.
I apologize. I didn't have my mic on. Good morning, everybody. Benita Howell, Buffalo, New York. For me, it's the process of recovering. I like to say purposefully for learning how to get along and go along with your body as well as your new norm. I've been through a lot of surgeries and different things like that. And you have a new norm after those things. So it's the process of learning how to deal with your new norm.
Whoa, that was deep. I like that. Thank you. Hi, Nick. Welcome.
And you,
Hello, good morning, everybody. My name is Nick Paxelt. I'm in Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Ooh.
And for me, healing is giving myself permission to grieve, grow, and evolve as things progress.
So you said grieve, grow, and evolve.
Yes.
Ooh, gotcha. Thank you. Sarah.
Good morning. I'm Sarah. I'm logging in from Springfield, Massachusetts.
Ooh.
This is a really great topic. Healing kind of goes hand in hand with, healing from grief and loss as well. And someone said something to me decades ago about the grief process. Um, he said that, the medical model will tell you that abnormal grief is anything after a year and a half. And he said that is simply not true. If you love and care about somebody, you're going to grieve in many different ways throughout your lifespan. And for me, that really holds true for me. Part of my healing process is allowing myself to feel the feelings as they come up, because it's sort of like uh, a scribble. I know, Phil, you like to draw. But I just like one of those like messy scribbles. They go in and out, in and out, in and out. That's what healing means to me. And I really resonated and identified with the person that said the new norm, right? We move through our grief and we heal in new ways as we move forward in our life. So thank you for letting me share.
Thank you. The greater the love, the greater the grief, right? Yeah, for sure. Hi, John.
Hi, good morning. I'm John Barlow, person in recovery, recovery coach professional. I sit in Fairfield, Connecticut. Healing, I think about every day. I'm not in an insignificant amount of pain. It just comes with the territory, with aging and activity, I guess. But I do find that when I'm engaged in this community and doing the work we do, I feel better physically. So I am healing every day when I'm doing my recovery stuff. And I'm thankful for that.
Thank you. Ed. Well, you gotta unmute yourself, dude. There you go.
Thank you, Phil. Good
Mhm.
morning, everyone. Ed Havlovic coming to you live from Weehawken, New Jersey. Uh, for me, recovery is a transformation. It's a returning to a state of wellness or state of health. And because everyone's spiritual, emotional, mental, physical beings are different, that recovery will take different lengths of time for different types of situations. However, for me, my personal experience is any healing process also entails a scab. It's not pretty sometimes and it's awkward, but it is necessary to keep my return to health and wellness safe.
Okay. Thank you. Kevin.
Yeah, thanks. I'm Kevin. I'm coming to you from White Rock, British Columbia. That's just about a 5-minute drive from the Washington border in Canada. And when you first said healing, just coming off of an ethical considerations course up here, I automatically thought of this self-care and thinking about healing as being my own healing being an ethical prerogative. Then as I thought about it a little bit more and heard people share about it, I thought about Carl Rogers quote saying that he once famously said that if given the absence of any other sort of barriers, people will just move towards a greater state of wellness. And for me, I think that's what it is for me, is just removing any barriers. No, and there's no finish line for me. I'll always be moving towards a greater state of wellness, and always be healing in some fashion, whether it's spiritually, emotionally, or physically.
Thank you. Daryl.
Healing to me is multidimensional. Uh, and what I mean by that is like it's a process that involves layers. It's layers to it to me. The work that I do, that's spiritual healing. But some of the physical healing and other things that I need to work on is different than my spiritual healing. But at the end of the process is acceptance for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's accepting the things that I've been through, accepting the things that I cannot change. It's just acceptance at the end. Even when we talk about the grieving and things of that nature, at the end of it, the healing process is acceptance.
Thank you, Daryl.
Also, I just want to let everybody know I'm from Detroit, Michigan. I forgot that part.
Welcome, Michigan. Victor.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, my name is Victor. I'm in San Diego, California.
Wow.
For me, I think what I associated with healing is feelings and growth. So I feel like for me, there's going to be some uncomfortable feelings that come along with healing. Like even if I have injured myself, right, or maybe cut myself or something, as that healing starts to begin, there's going to be some like itchiness around that wound. There's going to be some nerves maybe mending. There's going to be some uncomfortable feelings associated with healing.
Mm-hmm.
And then for me, healing doesn't really come without growth, right? So there has to be some kind of a growing process or a growth component to healing. And I just have to allow that space. We can heal. Sometimes the same wound can be on two different hands, and it can heal at different speeds, right? Depending on me, how I nurture that wound, or how I nurture that cut. So for me, I feel like it depends on me how fast or how slow I heal, and either way is okay. And it's definitely going to incorporate growth and some feelings.
Thank you, Victor. Shireen.
Good morning, Shireen. I'm coming from Seacar in New Haven. Healing for me was for all the trauma that I have done was to allow myself to open my mouth and ask for help. And I knew I couldn't heal without asking for help because I couldn't do it alone. I was alone. I wasn't strong enough. The recovery has taught me to, they have a saying, closed mouths don't get fed, and now I try to give that back to somebody else, letting them know, listen, there's no judgment. I'm here I'm here for anything that you want me to go through with you, letting somebody know it's okay, because sometimes going through things alone is scary. So I allow myself to heal by talking about it today and not trying to cover it up and hide it like it just exists. And I don't want my recoveries to do that, to let them know that I am here no matter what it is. Let's do it. Let's go through it together. So today is like together for me with the healing, letting people know what's going on with me and solving and taking care of it in the right manner, not acting out on it.
Thank you, Shireen. Hi, John. Quite the process to unmute, I know, but you'll get there.
Hello there, big dog.
Bro.
John Sports from the romantic Connecticut. And my camera screwed up. I have the process of relinquishing all attachments and dualities in order to achieve at-one-ment with all of creation.
Did you just write that?
Well, I've been thinking about it. I've heard a lot of cool stuff. So I've been doing my usual wordsmithing thing, and that's where I landed.
Well, read it again, because that was a lot. I want to hear it again.
The process of relinquishing all attachments and dualities in order to achieve at-one-ment, also known as atonement, right, with all of creation.
Oh, at one mint atonement. Attachment. So, what's an example of a duality?
Good, bad,
Oh, gotcha. Cool.
dark, black, white, evil,
Hmm.
good. It's all that guy Zarathustra's fault. He's the one who introduced the concept of duality. Otherwise, we would be all ambiguity and we wouldn't have to worry about this.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, John. Always love hearing from you. Michael,
Am I there?
you're there. Good man.
Okay. When I first came into recovery, I thought alcohol and drugs was the only thing I was recovering from.
Hmm.
I've been in recovery for on a recovery path. I don't say I've been in recovery not anymore because that's like it's finished. My recovery is ongoing, and as I began to work with others in dealing with their issues and processes, they introduced me to a lot of trauma within myself that I didn't even know I had. So I've been a grieving counselor. I've been a grieving recovery coach ever since I've been in this field. The thing for me was to find people who did not intellectualize what I was trying to say to you, and to find people who could provide me with the same compassion and patience that my clients need, to give that to me. So I had to really work to find people who had the patience, the understanding, and the compassion necessary for me to process that those issues. I can tell you about a traumatic experience today, but it may take me 5 years to really accept it and not let it have the power over me that it's had. So it's a process,
Hmm.
and I think it's just something that I feel I feel that once we start this work, we enter into a grieving process
Hmm.
and nobody tells us about it.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. Brian, how do you think about healing?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Brian. I'm a person in recovery. I'm the volunteer manager at the Danbury C-Car. The process of healing, I would describe it as a process. I would say active changes, how to cope with things that could be emotional, physical, spiritual, intellectual. It could even be occupational, just active changes on how to cope and work through these things.
Thank you, Brian. Michael Serrano, how do you think about healing?
The opposite of hurt. That's
The
the
op
only thing that I could, the only
Ah.
thing that comes to mind is the opposite of hurt, right? We are hurt
Mhm.
or some way, somehow, something hurts you, and then that process of healing comes in after, right? But I think you have to allow that to happen, right? And I believe that there's individuals, like other individuals out of yourself, that can help. But I think you have to allow that as well, right? Because somebody can knock on the door. I could be sick, right? I could have the flu, and somebody can knock on the door and say, "Hey, I brought you all this stuff," and I could just look at them and be like, "I don't want it." Bah, just shut the door on them, right? I don't want
Mhm.
that.
Right.
That was me in the past too, right? Where I just be like, "I don't want no help. I'm good,
Hmm.
good,"
Gotcha.
and I was okay with not healing, right?
I think similarly too about healing and what was revealed to me when we had our conversation. I had a conversation about all this last week. Was that I feel something needs to be wounded in order to be healed. And you just said that something needs to be hurt or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, my question, and I'll talk a little more, but I'm going to give you the question first, is um, what quadrant comes to mind first when you think of healing? And when I say quadrant, um, or like if you go to the doctor now, like for the medical doctor, that they're just going to really focus on the physical, right? You're almost reduced to being a box. what pill can I put in to make this box run better, or what do I need to take out to make this box be better? And they don't really talk about the other, all four quadrants that Don Coyes introduced me to many, many years ago. Uh, because I grew up in Alcoholics Anonymous, we were talked a lot about, physical, mental, spiritual. Um, Don Coyes added the emotional quadrant as well, and they all overlap. I mean, but I like to think of them in wholeness, that we have the physical, the mental, the spiritual, and the emotional. And as I was making notes, as you guys were sharing how you think about healing, you went to a lot of the different quadrants. So I'm going to ask you, for me, when I think of healing, I automatically go to physical. I don't know why. And I found out, at least in that group last week, that not many people think of physical healing first when you use the term healing. I think of like how many, even like the cancer, you go that I underwent chemotherapy again this spring and summer. I was talking about my body physically healing, getting the cancer out of there, right? I uh my hip is all arthritic and I'm trying to loosen it up now with yoga. I'm thinking about healing that. I've loosened my left shoulder, became unfroze in my lap. Oh, by the way, I've been doing 20 days of yoga in a row, the November Down Dog Challenge. Woo, half an hour each day. And I was up to like 18 months and I got sick of doing yoga every day. And man, it makes all the difference in the world for me. But I really think more of that about my body, but I know it does other things for me emotionally, spiritually, mentally. When you think of healing for you personally, and we'll tie it in more to coaching down the road here, but when you think of you personally in healing, what quadrant comes to mind and why? Or just tell me about it. Who'd like to go first? Do I guys have to teach you the Zoom things here? Like if you scroll down again and you go to that react button and you'll see where you can raise your hand virtually. There you go. Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. I know you're a facilitator as well, so you don't want to leave me hanging.
You're welcome. And thanks for the laughter today. I really needed it.
Mhm.
Emotional for me, as somebody who's
Mm.
survived, multiple compounded traumas in my lifetime, my emotional, which really is tied to my spiritual as well, my emotional and spiritual healing, is always front and center for me, because I learned in my healing journey is that, we may dive deep into some of these things. I know I have in therapy and other sorts of mutual aid, into, some of the things that I've gone through in my life, but stuff still crops up, as I get older. Things pop up that I was unaware, like, oh, this is still affecting me. So for me, it's really like looking at that inward in a very intentional way that's filled with compassion and kindness for myself. And I tell myself daily that I'm doing the best that I can do. Thanks.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Daryl, what quadrant comes to mind?
I'm right there with Sarah. The first thing quadrant coming to mind is emotional. Because everything, I realize that everything that affects me deeply that I need healing from is internal. And it usually deal with my emotions. And that's something that I'm daily, as a daily work for me. Trying to work on healing emotionally.
Great. Thank you, Daryl. Priscilla, good to see you.
Good morning. My name is Priscilla, and I am a person in long-term recovery coach professional, and recovery coach professional facilitator. And I am here in West Michigan. So I am by Spring Lake, which is a little town by Lake Michigan. So here we are in beautiful West Michigan. That's going to snow tonight. So just a heads up that, yeah, I'm so not excited. So anyway, so thinking of different the quadrants and and which one comes to mind. So I'm gonna say for today is emotional because when I have physical things that happen, sometimes they get better, sometimes they reoccur, but the emotional part that goes with the physical of the shock or the part in your heart of the things that go there. So and I know we're being recorded, so I'm not going to put all that information out there of my personal self. I'm like,
Gotcha.
oh, totally take the recorder off and I'll share. But reality is, things that I don't like to admit emotionally, and I'll just say it in a nice way. I'm not ready for prime time. Your Zoom might show it, but that is an emotional factor that acceptance to the truth is not always comfortable. So it's nice to share with others. And thank you for having this safe place, even though it's recorded. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Point taken. Hi, Ed.
Good morning. Like you, Phil, my first quadrant that I would always go to is also the physical. For some reason, I recognize the need for healing in a physical sense first and foremost. That's not to say that I don't also heal in the other quadrant, spiritually or mentally or emotionally, but I don't pick up on the need of healing in those areas as quickly as I do in a physical sense.
Good point.
So and it's often tells me that there is another area that needs healing because of the physical pain or the physical need of healing in the other quadrants. But the first one I always recognize is physical. And it could be because of my age. At 73, things don't always work as well. And so I tune into the physical because of my age and my experiences that I'm going through now. So
yeah, I hear that. Thank you, Ed. Nick.
So I used to always go to emotional first when I think of healing, just because of a lot of trauma I've been through, especially growing up in Salt Lake City and coming out when I was 15. Not the most popular move there.
Yeah.
But now, like in the last year, I got diagnosed with severe rheumatoid arthritis. I got on chemo medication for it. So now my brain goes to physical when it comes to healing because that's what I'm experiencing currently. So I think it kind of changes as we change, and what's kind of in front of us at the time is what the quadrant is going to be that we go to immediately.
Yeah, thank you. Dwayne.
Good morning. I'm Dwayne Dean, and I'm from. I guess I have dual residency, Covington, Georgia, and Baltimore, Maryland. So I spend about half of my time in both places, whether physical or virtually. Um, for me, it's a little different. I have to go to the mental. And I say the mental because for me, and it's maybe just how I'm conditioned, I have to have a plan. It has to be logical. I have to assess the need, and all that's done in the mental quadrant because I can't rely on my emotional or physical because both of them throughout the day change. Emotionally, anything that I feel emotionally is normally temporary, and emotions can defy logic. So I cannot feel good but if I have the plan, no matter how I'm feeling emotionally or at 51 years old, physically, I try to stick to the plan. So I always go back to the mental. That's what works for me.
This is so fascinating. Thank you. Benita.
Mental for me is, well, I first have to accept what's going on and then I have to process it. And because I'm a researcher, I go and do all this research and everything and come back to the table. And then I hit the physical because I believe that physical is a great part for healing as well. But it always starts with the mental. Yes.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. Chris.
Yeah, for me, I'm gonna go spiritual as my primary quadrant. I think for like me, like it manifests in the other quadrants. I might feel lethargic. I might catch myself emotionally eating. I might be uh overly like resentful or But like really when I look at it, the healing it comes from some sort of disconnect in my spiritual life. And that's typically what I try to when I feel something in my body, it's serving a purpose that I need to attend to something in the spiritual realm, typically is my experience.
Hmm. I don't know if I want to ask this question or not. Then
Ask it. I'm gonna ask it.
uh, I got myself in trouble asking some of these questions last time, but not real trouble, but people had strong reactions. But can you be wounded spiritually that you need healing from?
Can I be?
Yeah.
In my experience, my opinion, yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going to ask you what does a spiritual wound look like or manifest itself as?
For me, it's feelings of
So that's a feeling.
well, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think spiritually, the spiritual realm can
All
manifest
right,
in
go ahead. I cut you off, but
different
go ahead.
ones. But
Go,
yes,
finish the thought. Finish the thought.
wounded spiritually, I think for me, it's like, and I'm going to use the word feeling again, but it's this idea that like I've lost purpose, I've lost
Oh.
connection in my day to day. Perhaps a lot of times for me, there's right now, like, when I'm feeling when I feel the healing needing to go on in the spiritual realm, it's coming from this idea that like there's lack of balance in my life.
Hmm.
And again, the way I combat that is taking a look at what I'm doing in the spiritual quadrant and trying to really focus on my
Okay.
relationships, spiritual side.
Um, yeah, I'll talk.
And if I'm feeling like the physical effects, like say like emotional eating, I find that combating it through the
Oh,
spiritual realm will also kind of organically take care of these other realms, these other
isn't
quadrants.
isn't all eating emotional? No, it's just kidding. I think I love my food far too much.
This
I'm
is an
sorry.
example. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Chris. I'll touch on that a little more, but I know John's sitting there too, so let's see what people over there in the WRCC Willimantic, what John has to say.
I I was thinking about like the love wound, the initial love wound. I mean, what I wasn't even aware of this deep longing that I had that was like the love wound.
Well,
I
describe John, describe the love wound. Not everyone will
that
know
that
what
that
you mean by
I had like this constant I've heard addiction described as a constant state of lack, that there's something missing,
that.
and I was unaware of all this effort I was putting in to try and fill this hole, but it was
Yeah.
really hunger for my creator that I was feeling.
Okay.
That's what I talk about being wounded by love. But the other thing is there are things that happen in life that sort of rock the underpinnings of my worldview, and I consider those to be spiritual wounds. And there's only a spiritual solution to those things. I find it difficult to operate in the world when, my idea of how people should be treated or how I should operate in the world is threatened or called into question by other things that are going on. So I consider that to be a spiritual wound, and I find that the solution to it is always spiritual.
Hmm. Wow. Thank you, John. Sarah.
I'm really glad you brought this up because I have actually two examples of what you're kind of bringing forward. I'm a child of a Vietnam veteran,
Mm-hmm.
and my partner is a Gulf era veteran, and what he taught me was something that they call a moral injury, and what he
Mm-hmm.
experienced being in the Gulf, in the weapons room launching missiles in Iraq, and he said, his what was happening directly affected his own moral compass and sort of what he was indoctrinated to believe were the values, right? That we are not going to shoot our weapons at people who are not shooting back at us. And he had a moral injury. He fractured in that moment. And for him, he views it as a spiritual injury, right? It's a wounded spiritual, and how he
Hmm.
approached that, which I think is did something similar. He joined Veterans for Peace. And so he's a reverend, he's a minister, my partner is, and so he I just did a peace walk last year from Maine to DC to amplify peace in the world. But it took him a really long time. He's still healing from that injury. My father's the same. He connected with his unit in Vietnam. And the healing for him, his spiritual moral injury healed. Same way that our folks heal, right? Peer to peer. Veterans been doing that for a lot longer than we have. And he started to heal. It took 20 years, but that for when I hear more, spiritual injury, that's what I think of, that everybody has a spiritual moral compass. And something happens that directly opposes that. And that's when I hear spiritual injury, that's what I hear. You're wounded spiritually because they were asked to do things that were against, their moral compass. And for my partner, he was led to believe one thing, and what he was witnessing was entirely different. And I think, knowing those two men intimately, that it takes a really, really long time. And
Yeah.
some veterans, that's why 22 veterans a day take their lives, because
Yeah.
sometimes they can't get over what they've done. And they thought they were doing things for country. So that's what came up. And I think I'm not going to task you for bringing it up, Phil, because I think it's a beautiful conversation. It
Yeah.
can go, intersectionalities can go everywhere. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. That's a great example. Thank you so much. Dwayne.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on the spiritual wound because it made me think back on some other conversations that I've had around that. And for me, a spiritual wound is when, and it's usually has something to do with me not being totally yielded to the God of my understanding, or there's a gap or a space in my relationship with the God of my understanding. So my spiritual wounds usually come when I have put an unreasonable expectation, or I misunderstood uh God's expectation, or I misunderstood the will of God in my life. So my spiritual wounds usually come from me not having a good back and forth with the God of my understanding, whether it's prayer and meditation. So me just not being aligned to the will of God. So I become wounded spiritually because I'm like, God, why did you do this, God? Why would you have allowed this to happen? Or confusing my wants with the will of God in my life. So that's what, for me, that's where spiritual wounds come. But I think the resolve of it is always getting closer in alignment with the God of my understanding, and really understanding that I didn't understand for the most part.
Thank
So
you,
it
Dwayne.
probably goes back to me.
Thank you, Dwayne. Benita.
Oh, excuse me. Mine is a little different. I was raised up in the church. So my drug of choice 30 years ago was crack cocaine. And when I had reached, I don't like to say reached my bottom, but when I had got to the point where I knew I needed some real help, I went to the church. And it was okay at first until they found out that I was coming off the street and that my drug of choice was crack cocaine. They literally shunned me. They made me feel really bad. They didn't accept me, and it caused me to go back into the street. I didn't get the acceptance. I didn't get the love. I felt alone, rejected, depressed. And I went back into the street for 2 years and almost lost my life. But again, because I know Jesus, have a relationship with him, I did go back to the church, and I found a church that was really good to me and helped me with education and everything. And I bless God for that. But yes, for me, spiritual wounding is serious. It can be serious. It can be damaging. Yeah.
Thank you. Kevin.
Yeah, sorry, I don't want to dominate here, but I started thinking visuals. So you ask how you see it. For me, the spiritual is the lotus, and the other three quadrants are the pond. And so if something is off within those other quadrants, the lotus becomes sick, the spiritual becomes sick. If they become sick enough, the spiritual may even die. For me and my addiction, it was the spiritual side was the first to die, and it was the last to come back. I think it may not be as measurable as physical, but it's as meaningful because I think it's the litmus test for the health of the others.
Gotcha. Thank you, Kevin. Shireen.
I like this one. Spiritually, I do. This one hits home because I was a person like Miss Benita said, brought up in the church. We used to go Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and back on choir rehearsal on Saturday. And then when I got older, I said, I can't walk in the church. The church will fall down. Why to fall down? Because I developed a lifestyle that wasn't spiritually. You know, we was raised, you can't do this, you can't do that. And then when I got of age, I did everything. So my thing had to become with faith through my recovery. I had to learn faith to know that I'm just like everybody else. I can walk into the church and it's not going to fall and crumble, which it has not. I started talking differently. I started acting differently. It started to embed the spirituality, started to embed and live within me. Started making me be a truth teller instead of just lying for lying just to be lying. I learned the the I learned the quality of life of spirituality. I even became to talk in a tongue, if anybody would know what that is. So once I knew that my higher power had accepted me and knew and didn't hold me for all my faults because I am his child at the end of the day. I am a child of my higher power. And that's why this recovery thing is so serious because recovery and spirituality, it goes hand in hand. There's no way for myself I can make it without it. And it keeps me stronger every day. I'm learning more and more. Thank you.
Thank you, Shireen. Bajat. Oh my goodness, it's Bajat. How are you, my friend? Good to see you.
Hello, how are you? Good to see you. Um, I think spirituality is a tool for healing for other quadrant. It's from my perspective. It is not a quadrant by itself. It's here to be part and support other quadrant to heal. When you are sick or when you are physically sick, this one of the solution is here to pray and to connect with your spirituality to feel better. When you are emotionally down, you connect with your spirituality to feel better. So and and spirituality was I don't want to be created. Maybe it's here to heal other quadrant.
Yeah, I heard that a lot. Um, I wasn't really planning on going down this tack, but since we're going down this a little bit, my question is, are spiritual wounds self-inflicted or inflicted by some other force or person or both and? Any thoughts on that? John.
Thanks. So it's interesting you ask it that way, especially in the context of Benita and Shireen's examples of their experience with the church, because I find, this conversation of religion and spirituality a difficult one. And we so often think that somehow we're responsible for the organized religions, rules, and things that are in contradiction with our nature on how we treat each other. And so my spiritual lack or vacuum is part of how the Catholic Church treated and treats its members. And so I think, the organization of how we think about things has a lot to do with the lack of consistent adherence or belief in our spirituality. At least that's the case for me. So I find my spirituality now because I grew up in a church like those two women did, Catholic school all the way through altar boy, the whole thing. And yeah, they let us down big time. And so there was a spiritual vacuum there that needed to be filled with something else. And so I fill it with nature. I'm watching this PBS documentary on Da Vinci, and I'm gonna crush it, the paraphrase, but all the learnings, that are brought down on us, nothing speaks to us more clearly, fully articulate than nature does. And so that's where I find my spirituality now. But I think there is a real dichotomy and struggle with what we're responsible for and what the organized uh, uh, religion or spiritual structures uh, require of us.
Yeah, great point. Thank you, John. Victor.
I think for myself, I think currently that like spiritual wounds are self-inflicted. So that's like currently, like right now, and usually it comes from my sense of inadequacy or self-doubt or not living up to what I think or perceive is going to establish a spiritual connection. So usually it's not, it's my thoughts, right? The way that I think I'm not living up to what I should be doing spiritually that inflicts these wounds and causes separation. So for just for me personally, I feel that I do more damage to myself than damage done to me spiritually.
Gotcha. Thank you. Daryl.
I see it as both. And I notice that a lot of times when we mention the word spiritual, that we automatically go straight to religion. We go to the church or some other thing. But I see spiritual as an inside thing. And I think that things that happen outside of ourselves can affect us inwardly, and our own thoughts can also affect us inwardly. So I look at inward things as spiritual things, things that we can't see with our human eyes, our emotions, our thoughts. All these things are spiritual in nature. And I think they can be affected both by ourselves and other people.
Okay. Thank you, Daryl. Dwayne.
Yeah, when you ask about could spiritual wounds be inflicted, are they inflicted self-inflicted or by others? Like, first, I would be a heretic if I said that they were inflicted by God, because that would, of course, deny the attributes of God. So I know they don't come down from the divine, the infliction for the most part. I do know I can self-inflict spiritual wounds, and then whether or not someone else, whether it be the church or any other entity, can inflict them. I think it depends on who tells the story and who's willing to take any responsibility. And then also, is there an ignorance around it? Because, say, for instance, if it's like a religious or a spiritual entity, can I blame somebody else for my not studying to show myself approved? Or, can I blame them for, inflicting a wound when I have a direct line to my higher power, so that I can seek and get direction and things of that nature. So I guess I don't know. I'm saying all that to say I don't know if someone else can inflict them, and I think it depends on who's willing to take the responsibility. I think for myself that I'm always the one responsible for how I perceive or what I allow someone else to teach or hand to me, and not check it myself, or if that makes any sense.
Got you. So the question that that generated a lot of discussion last week was a very similar question to, and a lot of you talked about this, was emotional healing, meaning that you were emotionally wounded. If emotions are, we still have yet to decide what an emotion really is when we think about that. We've talked about it this and here for a while. Um, the question is, if it's just an emotion, is the pain real? And that's what got a lot of people irritated. So are you guys irritated by that question? If you are, somebody came on and said, I can't even believe you would ask that question. Bah, 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 and went off. So, which was made me glad that I asked it. So is emotional pain real? Why or why not? You guys talked about needed healing from emotional pain. Shireen.
Yeah, emotional pain can do a lot of damage.
Okay.
It's an action, something you're going through. It's like we allow ourselves to feel again. When I know for myself, I used to medicate not to feel. So I used to let they say, don't let your emotions run wild. How can you tell me not to let my emotions run wild and when my life was upside down in chaos? So now I got to find a way to bring it in, figure out what's going on with me.
How would you describe, Shireen, emotional pain? What words would you use?
Hurt.
Okay. Most pain hurts. I would agree with that. Just hurts. Gotcha. Daryl.
Right?
Yeah, okay. We'll see what other people say. Daryl.
Emotional pain has a manifestation, a
Yeah.
physical manifestation.
Yeah.
And I just heard what you just asked her, and I'm about to give you the description. The first time I was madly in love,
Ooh.
and I found out my girlfriend had cheated on me.
Ooh.
I
Hurts.
was emotionally wounded, and it had physical ramifications. I had no appetite. I felt extremely distressed. I felt drained. I felt lost. But physically, I felt tension in my stomach. I felt chest pains. It has a manifestation. I can go on for different emotions. It has physical manifestations as well. But I believe emotions it's just like being psychosomatic, a disorder. You think that you got chronic back pain, you're going to start feeling pain in your back. I have emotionally wounds have physical manifestations connected to them.
Yeah, but that's not real pain, Daryl. If you say you have lower back pain, it's just psychosomatic, so that's not really real.
It's not real to you, but it's real to me because I feel it.
That's a great answer.
See?
I love that answer.
See? Uh-huh.
Well said, Daryl. Chris, you had your hand up.
Yeah, so emotional pain, is it real? I don't know, like what does real mean? I mean it's
That's one of my
because
questions,
yeah,
Chris.
it's a matter of perspective, subjective to the receiver, I suppose. But like for me, all right, so we experience emotions, and I guess the choice I have is whether I perceive that as pain or I perceive that as an opportunity. And I just got through rereading Man's Search for Meaning again, and it's like this whole book about an immense deal of pain in a man's life, and then the way that he can kind of grasp that is looking and giving it purpose. So like I, I'm I am experiencing these emotions. This is actually happening. Whether it's perceived as pain is ultimately how I just like filter that information, I think.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. The examples that they brought up were actually twofold. Uh, and I think Daryl talked a little bit of the betrayal, but there's also like when someone we talked about this earlier, grief, right? Is the pain of grief real? And then one guy was talking about social. And what came out of that was intergenerational trauma, where they've shown that DNA can be actually altered because of trauma that happened in your family or your tribe or your culture or your ethnicity from generations ago. So, and that manifests itself differently in everyone. So, um, you know, and emotion is such a hard thing to wrap around. And then the pain, it was, I found it interesting too that like physical pain is strange in and of itself too, and how you handle it. So I had two pieces of my intestine removed last December. Um, and I came out of it and I was expecting, like that hot, searing kind of like, oh, like when you had, like I've had knee surgery too, and when you come out of that, you go, whoa, you know. And she said, I said, how's your pain? I said, it's good. I don't feel anything. And she said, intestines are not, they don't have the pain receptors for when they're cut or pierced. They only have pain if they expand too much, is when they're triggered. And I was like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that because I was expecting all this pain, and they cut two chunks of my intestine out, and there was literally minimal. So I don't know. I don't. That story probably has no relevance to anything we were talking about, but I thought I'd share it. Edgardo.
Thank you, Phil. Phil, that story has everything to do with what we're talking about. I like that analogy because being spiritually awoken for me was for a long time I numbed my feelings and I was spiritually blind to the life that was happening before me. People turn blue in the face trying to say how strong I am, how smart I am, how good looking I am, and it was all blocked. But all of a sudden, one day I wanted something stronger with my higher power than what I was chasing, which was a bag of dirt. And the moment that it felt like the obsession to use was lifted from my eyes, I was like, no way. It's almost like putting down the drug, like you said, waking up from the anesthesia or waking up from a surgery, and you're like, oh, and everything. And I'm laughing and crying at the same time because I didn't know what emotion to use. And being looking for a spiritual fulfillment. And I remember one time way, way back, you did one of these groups and you said, put your arms open and let the light in.
Yeah.
Learn how to accept the love. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you did that for me, man, it was life changing because I went to the top of Castle Crag and it was a beautiful sunny day. I was with Rita and I opened my arms and I let it in. And now it became my email picture. To wrap it up and keep it short, as a coach, I pour out all I can to everyone, but I had to surround myself with special pathways that can help me replenish my soul. Some way to find a self-care to allow me to overflow enough to share what's overflowing. Because when I get to a certain point, and it's happened this year where I pushed the boundaries and I took a week off because I was like, okay, I'm doing this wrong. Go back to square one and replenish. So with that being said, yes, everything you said about waking up from a surgery, it's almost it touched me because it was like waking up from a misery of 30 years of using. Thank you
Yeah.
for letting me share.
Yeah. Thank you, Edgardo. Kevin.
Yeah, I was just thinking about when you were asking if it's real. I volunteered in hospice for 7 years, and there was this woman with a cancer patient, and they couldn't control her pain with anything. They were throwing everything at it. Nothing was working. And this doctor walked in. He decided to talk to her for a while, and he found out this woman was in a nasty argument with her sister who hadn't come in to visit her. So the doctor called the sister and said, "Can you come in and they solved their whatever issue they had. The pain became easily manageable." So is it real? In this case, medically, it was.
Well, that's fascinating too. Thank you for that, Kevin. Wow. All right. What is the role of recovery coach in healing for the recovery? Talk about that. Sarah.
I think if we're managing our own stuff, right? Our own internal stuff that we can very simply just exist and be by shining our light of the possibilities and the potential of healing, and demonstrating that it takes time. People heal in different ways and different time frames, and I think as a recovery coach, we can serve as that example of there are possibilities and outcomes that if you give yourself a chance, they're just waiting for you. And just, simply being and shining that light can be enough for some people.
Okay, thank you, John.
So there's this guy named Henry Nouwen, and he wrote a book called The Wounded Healer, and I ascribe to this philosophy that the healer of today is someone who is so familiar with their own pain, their own struggle, and able to articulate it so well that they're able to create a container that gives permission to others to work on the things that are the most challenging to them. And I think that that's what we try and do as coaches, is to make people feel safe and valued so that they have the opportunity to work on something that might be really seemingly overwhelming until they're in the right space for it.
Yeah.
Can you put that book in the title in the chat? Do you have the capability there?
Yeah, of course. And the other thing I think about is Don Coyus, and thinking about how we as people in recovery who have been able to put aside our petty differences to work on what's really important have this sacred obligation to the rest of society to role model that.
Yeah. Talk to me about recovery coaching and healing. Benita.
For me, I think as a recovery coach, it's our job to the fundamentals, to being a good listener, because everybody needs to be heard. And when people know that they're being heard, that starts the process some right there, because they feel like they're valued, that they have something, they're valuable human beings. So I would say the good listener, the of course manage your own stuff, but also treating them as a resource, allowing them to have voice, and encouraging them, being a cheerleader for that person. Yeah.
Thank you. Ed.
We've been talking so much about pain and healing. We talked about the quadrants. I noticed that most of my pain and most of my suffering, for example, the question was, is emotional pain real? For me, yes. And the reason I say yes is because, as I said before in the chat, feelings are not factual, but it's a fact we all have feelings.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is everyone experiences feelings, etc. Most of my pain, emotional pain, is always dependent upon me as a lack of acceptance of a situation. And that is the greatest pain always for me. I can treat physical pains, etc. As a recovery coach, we all have the healing process, and most of us have a natural healing tendency, and the body does amazing things for healing. One of the things the body does is form scabs to protect and help the healing process. I'm a picker. Why do I have to always not accept the process, hurry it along, and my resistance to acceptance, I pick. I think my role as a recovery coach is to help people recognize their healing process, to recognize and not be afraid of the scabs, although they're ugly and uncomfortable at times. If we can help that scab process, the healing process, my duty is to help people not pick and help the acceptance process.
Yeah. Thank you. Priscilla.
Just thinking, all the shares, appreciate today. This is a good day. Great topic. But just thinking about, how as a recovery coach, of course, one is staying in my lane. Huge one, staying in my lane of not trying to fix people and don't make false promises. This is going to get better. Time will heal. Time heals all wounds. All those acronyms are slogans that we've heard all the time. But I appreciate the idea of this could be like a paper you put on, show people the different quadrants and talk about things. And, but sometimes people may need more than recovery coaching services. So I can help you. I can walk alongside you. I can listen. But I have to remember I'm not a psychologist and I'm not a therapist. And I am there's no set time on anything, because sometimes our whatever it is, physical, emotional, mental, all those things, sometimes they can be put on the shelf and we pull them back down when they reoccur or trigger comes back. So I'm just an advocate of reminding that I can be an active listener, but I do have to remember to always stay in my lane. Thank you.
Oh, beautiful, beautifully said. I was hoping someone would go down that road because, and I don't want you to answer this question now, but I want you guys to all think about it. There has to be wounds. In order to be healing, there has to be wounds, right? Well, what wounds do you stay away from as a coach? And what ones do you address? That's not an easy question. Daryl.
I became a recovery coach in 2017, and I thought that my healing as a coach would come with acquiring things. What I mean by that is I was getting paid, I had a job, and
Yeah.
and I was gonna get a car and a house, and and all these things. And then the more I began to coach, the more I began to realize that I was healing from other things besides the substance that I was abusing. And that came as a result of being a coach because I started identifying myself and my clients. I started identifying some of the wounds that they were afflicted with some of the wounds that I were afflicted with. And I started and I realized that it was a team effort. Even though I was the coach, it's a team effort. You can't be a coach without a team.
Yeah.
So it's a team effort. So I learned from them. I learned from them as much as they learned from me. I just spoke to a gentleman the other day, and I was telling him that I think that he would make a good coach. And the reason why I told him that he would make a good coach is because he keep relapsing. And he looked at and he looked at me and said, "Why did you say that?" I said, "Because as a coach, you're always in the meeting. You always are in recovery mode as a coach. So you're coaching yourself. So
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
why I'm with it."
Thank you, Daryl. That's not Kai Fox, is it? It really is Kai Fox.
It is in the
Wow.
flesh. Good to be seen. Good to see everyone calling in from Toronto today. I really enjoyed this topic and everything that's been shared thus far. I think the thing that comes up for me is the role as a recovery coach is to hold space for exploration, um, holding space for the conversations. The like was shared earlier, I believe it was Priscilla sort of spoke for. My tendency in certain conversations is to move to fixing. But if I want to fix something, it probably means that I'm not comfortable sitting in whatever pain this is, which has more to do with me than the other individual. So how do we hold space to look at this and see like, okay, where is this pain coming from? How do we explore together and find out what do we need to do? Where do you want to go with this? And that requires us to, even sit in silence, rest with those feelings, try and find those definitions. Because in my experience, if something in me is hurting, because it's crying out for attention, and I need to find out what part of me needs that attention.
Well said, Kai. Good to see you. AJ. Come on, mute button, work. You're not unmuted yet. There you
Can
go.
you hear me?
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. My headset is not working. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be with you, Phil. It's the first time I'm on with you. And it's a great question, and I'm learning so much just listening to everybody. I think the role of the recovery coach is one of the first things would be, in my experience, is to validate somebody's pain. I'm nursing a pinched nerve condition, and it was so painful in the early days. And I talked to my wife about it, and she says, "I told you to go see a physical therapist," and never asked me, or validated my pain, and I think here's where the role is to validate that pain, to be able to listen actively, and most important, I think, is if I were to wear my recovery coach hat, is to treat somebody as a resource instead of an object. Because most of the time, traditionally and conventionally, when you tell somebody, they want to quickly fix you and tell you what to do, but rather saying using that person's own internal resource to connect with that pain. And I think sometimes some of a very careful level of self-disclosure will also be important, but not too much. And finally, just to wrap this up, I think culture is also. I'm an Asian American, and Asian people talk about pain quite differently than other cultures, and probably that's a factor. And I'll leave you there. Thank you. It's a great to see all of you.
So when you say as a culture they talk about pain differently, what would be a couple of the key points that you think are different?
Well, in the Asian culture, people don't talk about their sexual issues as openly as most.
Okay.
It's like almost a taboo.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So we talked a lot about healing, and some of you have put this together, and I think this is a distinction I want to discuss here, especially for recovery coaches, is what's the distinction between healing and personal growth? And what is the role of the recovery coach? The distinction between growth and healing as you think about it. And again, this is where I need somebody to like scroll down and raise their virtual hand and kick off this conversation. Thank you, Mickey. I appreciate you.
So, truthfully, I don't have the answer to that question.
And you're just going to start the conversation off.
But I'll start it off.
All right.
What comes to mind to me is that healing needs to precede personal growth. So we have to deal with whatever wounds or trauma that we have to be able to put ourselves into, to create the space, be open-minded about then moving to personal growth. So I see one as a restorative process, and I see the other one as um, a bringing ourselves to new levels and growing into areas that we haven't been before. So.
Yeah, and again, with my physical mind, I wonder too, like, I'm trying to heal some of the lifelong injuries or whatever, but can I don't think I can ever achieve levels of my 20s or, a strength, maybe strength, I don't know, but
Well,
anyway.
I mean, an example of using a physical wound could be that, you have you end up with a back problem. You got
Yeah.
pain in the back, and you go through some treatment to get it to the point where it's no longer causing you pain.
Right.
But then the personal growth could be doing the appropriate exercises to
Yep.
strengthen it beyond an area where it wasn't before, so that you're
Yep.
now taking it to a new level that you hadn't achieved.
Love it. Thank you. Priscilla.
Hi. I just want to say that I think if I don't manage my own stuff and use the tools that I have been taught from myself and from over the years from others, if I don't manage my own stuff and take care of my own personal growth, how can I be there for others? So I think to be able to be an effective recovery coach, I have to walk the walk and talk the talk, manage my self-care, and of course, my big one I always say is tune out and tune off, and remember that, uh, of course, my motto thing is staying in my lane. So I think I have to keep on, keep on, keep on. And that's why I come to these sessions, is to learn new things from others. So I appreciate today.
Yeah, thank you, Priscilla. Chris.
Yeah, so I believe they can be simultaneous and coexist, growth and healing. I also think, like, when I think about the role of a recovery coach, part of, I think personal growth is subjective to how we measure it. So part of our role as a recovery coach is to really motivate and have well-defined goals that we can use to kind of like propel into this, I guess, idea or concept of personal growth, that we're accomplishing things, we're moving forward, we're reestablishing goals, and we're pushing forward. I think about healing, and as we work on personal growth and we're checking things off and we're accomplishing goals and reestablishing new ones, I think, in whatever phase of healing we're in, like the mind changes, that like, hey, I accomplished this, what else can I accomplish? And I think that can carry weight in your healing process as well. I also look at, like, our role as a recovery coach. I think of models of change, or stages of change, and really our responsibility to recognize where people are at with that, as far as whether they're ready to start the healing process, whether they're ready for personal growth, and meeting where they're at. So.
Thank you. Daryl.
I don't know what happened to my camera. It went out, but
it's been out the whole time, dude.
I look at healing as, like, as we all said earlier, as the process of personal growth is the outcome. I almost put my hand down after Mickey shared, because he gave a good analogy. He gave a physical analogy, although I think the question, the way it was asked, it could be applied to something more internal. But the way he gave it, it's like having an injury in your shoulder, and or trying to develop your body, and you're trying to heal, and you start to go to physical therapy, to exercise, and then the personal, once it's healed, it's like a development. You gain more strength. But I'm looking more so at, like, life in general, dealing with emotions. Like, I'm going through something right now. I'm trying to establish myself more emotionally. Stop thinking so pessimistically. So I'm in a process of healing emotionally. So I do certain things, like I listen to Buddhism, and I listen to quotes, and I listen to Stoicism quotes, things that's part of the healing process. And once I reach a certain level of emotional stability, I look at that as personal growth. So it's like personal growth is the outcome. The healing part is the process.
Yeah, well said. Thank you. I think sometimes too, what this conversation gets me to think of is we can be growing in certain aspects of our life, but not healing in others. And I think we could all kind of come up with um, examples of that, right? So, and that could be in different quadrants. You could be growing and building muscles and stamina and strength and flexibility physically, but you haven't dealt with any emotional trauma or something along those lines. Michael. There you go.
What I had to work with myself in my recovery journey was acceptance. In that I was looking at me, my life, and the world as I felt it should be, not realizing how it was. I felt like the world owed me. Like I didn't get the relationship with my mother that I wanted. I didn't get the relationship with my father that I wanted. I tell people that since I've been in recovery, since I've been born, I've been identified differently. Like my birth certificate says I'm colored. Some kind of way when I made it to elementary school, I became a Negro. You follow? So I've always been defined outwardly and trying to seek the expectations and standards of the outward world. But when I come within myself and start trying to really tell the truth, I have to really get into acceptance of how the world is, how I am, what gifts I have, what gifts I don't. Because sometimes I've been trying to mimic, like I may try to mimic you. When I look at your style of facilitating this group, I may try to mimic you. But one thing I really enjoyed about this group is that everybody has been accepted no matter what your opinions were. You know, everybody has been accepted. And that's the main thing I look for is an open door to where I can express myself no matter what it is. And that's what was the thing about recovery that really drew me in here.
Amen.
You know, I get to recovery and say anything. I can talk about being raped, molested, incest, the whole 9 yards. And people are patient enough with me to listen. And maybe afterwards, somebody may approach me and say, me too, or this is what I had to do, things like that. So it's like, it's just a continuum for me. Like right now, I'm trying to learn how to be an old man with an illness. You see what I mean? Just like what you said, there are things that I'm 71 years of age. I'm recovering from E. coli and sepsis. So now there's certain things I can no longer do. What am I doing? I'm grieving. I'm angry. I'm all of it. But I still have to stay focused on what are my responsibilities to myself and to others. I think that's a great big key. To whereas no matter what you're going through, you still have to be responsible for your priorities and your responsibilities. Before this program, if I had this issue, I would quit. I would say I'm not going to work today. I would give up in a lot of different areas. But recovery has taught me that no matter what you're going through, stay focused as best you can on your priorities and responsibilities to yourself and others. That's it.
Thank you, Michael. I think when I think of this topic too, it goes to the caption on the Recovery Coach Academy manual, transformed people transform people. And, you know, given all the techniques and everything, it's hard to coach someone when you haven't gone through your own transformation process, which to me involves um, healing from wounds, and it also involves a lot of growth. I mean, and growth equals change equals transformation. So, you know, over 37 years of recovery, I think of how many times I've not maybe reinvented, but recreated or my personality and my techniques and my styles and the way I approach the world continues to evolve. It's never stayed the same. It's always shifting. Any final thoughts about recovery coaching and healing and growth that you would like to share? Michael, you've been kind of quiet sitting on the sidelines the whole time. You're like,
I'm
darn
just
it. I
listening.
was like, darn it. I knew he was going to call on me.
It's something that is ongoing, right? It's a healing. Like I live with diabetes, right? I'm a type 1 diabetic, and um sometimes I don't even think about it. I forget. I'll be like, somebody be like, yo, you want a piece of cake? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, I can't have that.
Yeah.
Like I'll pay for it later, right? So but
Uh-huh.
I think being self-aware, right?
Mm.
And then knowing yourself first and how your feelings and stuff, and if you address those first, it'll be a lot easier to work with others, right? Because then you're self-aware of yourself, right? And asking the correct or the right questions to get the person to think for themselves, right? Like you said, transform people. And I think you need that major transformation in order to
Mhm.
help others transform.
Thanks, Michael. Nick.
So I'm going to leave my camera off and hope so my internet doesn't go all weird again.
Okay.
I started as a recovery coach because I wanted to help other people. And
Yeah.
it turns out that it's done more for me than I think it has for for anybody else. And so by helping other people heal, it's made me grow and heal more than I could have ever possibly imagined I would. I don't think I'd be as strong in my recovery or where I'm at in my life if it weren't for going through all of the things I've been through. And then seeing that reflected in somebody else and being there for them is just such a gift and something that I'll forever be grateful for.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Uh, Anybody else? Come on, come to some closing thoughts. Ed, you're thoughtful. Come on, Ed. Hit the mute button and talk to us.
You know, thank you, Phil. I was thinking, the thing that I'm taking away from this conversation is that we are forever and constantly in motion of healing. And healing for me leads to growth, but not growth in a linear way. You mentioned something where you can't do the things that you did at 20 or 21 years old.
Oh, yeah.
At my age, I can't either. But my growth is not that I can't do more of what I used to do. The healing process allows me to explore and develop in other ways that I never anticipated that I would be able to work in. So the healing process is all about growth, but not in the way that I expect my growth, but in discovering new opportunities that constantly amaze me.
Yeah. And I think as you start to figure out, we don't have as much time left as we used to. That goes is true for everyone. But your body's gradually, how to say it, it's dying. And you just have to get kind of used to that fact and grow in other ways. You might not be able to reverse the aging process. No one gets out of here alive. So you're also left with that. How do I'm left with the question, focus on the things I can do, which tends to be actually opens a lot of, can I do that? Like just kind of like opens new areas to explore. And then to really pursue things mentally, become more emotionally aware. And then, of course, spiritually is just continually opening my soul to the spirit to let more in to see what happens, if I'm capable of doing that. Um, and I think as our role as a coach is to model a lot of that as well, because let people see it in you, right? It's clear that if we can't give away what we don't have. And I've even questioned that at times, but I do believe that's true. Um, and just be aware, and I think Priscilla said it best, we're not, and John used the title wounded healer. I wouldn't give us the title of healer as a coach. I would give us the title of coach that can point people where they might go to get the healing. That, all right, that's some heavy shit you just laid on me. Have you talked to your therapist about that? Do you have a therapist? You might want to consider getting one, or that's and it's perfectly okay to tell somebody that's out of my lane. I'm not trained to handle that. I can't do that. And I would always say, thoroughly appreciate you feel comfortable enough with our relationship that you shared that. But now what do we do with it? Because I certainly am not capable of walking you through all this. But and I just want to offer that caution. So again, I want to thank you guys for your time and your patience and your discussion and your vulnerability. Wow, what a fantastic discussion. I hope you have a great rest of your day and God willing and the creek don't rise. I'll see you next month too. Take care, everybody.